In this episode of Building Legacy, we sit down with a couple that hails all the way from Kansas City, home of some of the best barbecue you'll ever eat, also known as the barbecue capital, pioneers of the improvisational style of jazz known as bebop. Kansas City.
We are the Browns. My name is Dolores Brown. We live in Kansas City, Missouri, so we traveled here from Kansas City, Missouri. We've been married 48 years, I retired, so I'm not working right now. I'm at home, and I enjoy my life at this point.
And as she stated, we are the Browns, and I'm Pastor James Brown, but I work as a student safety specialist in the town of Lee Summit. Again, married 48 years, and pastor a small church in the inner city in Kansas City, Missouri, Christ Temple Church of God in Christ, located at 3544 Highland Avenue in the city of barbecue and fountains. And we are here to be a part of building legacy. And the ironic thing is the gentleman that's shooting the video is my second cousin, and this is my first time meeting him, and it's been a fantastic pleasure for him to have such a gift and a talent, and above all, to have such a grounded belief in and faith in God, to be able to promote legacy, marriages, in a time that even the church is experiencing a great uptick in divorces. And I think this should serve as a balancing act for churches, parents, teachers, people that are in relationships, to know that it's imperative that our children see us doing the Bible in church and not like the world. Mm-hmm. After a hard day, I'll come home and if she feels like it, I'm the type of guy who I can make a meal off grapes and cheese. Be able to sit down with her, and we're empty nesters, but to be able to sit down with her, enjoy conversation. And I know there's a large percentage of the time as a pastor, she has no clue what I'm talking about, and but she just gives me an ear and lets me vent. So I enjoy just spending that time with her and my great-grands and my grands and all my children, but particularly my great-grands. We have two great-granddaughters, and one is totally blind, but she is marvelously smart. And the other great-grandchild is a talker at 2 years old, to be I think, prospective lawyer. So I like spending time with family. Then I love my church family and being with them. And between those two families, it keeps me grounded, it keeps me rooted.
Yes. And I enjoy family also. I love my children. I love my husband. I enjoy when we're able to spend time together. And then I enjoy cooking when I do cook. I used to cook all the time and have family dinners, but I've gotten older now, so I don't do it as often, but I still cook. And I try to cook healthy a little bit, so, he can kind of stay healthy along with us together. So we just really enjoy one another. We both love one another, and I figure next year it'll be 50 years we'll be married, and that is amazing. So I'm looking forward to moving on up, as the Lord continue to bless us.
Hawaii, here we come.
Well, hello, guys.
Howdy.
Thank you so much for traveling all the way from
Kansas City, Missouri.
My
the
goodness.
Whole barbecue.
Kansas City in the house.
Oh, yes.
And your name's Mr.
James Brown.
and Mrs.
Dolores Brown.
Dolores Brown. And these are actual family members of yours,
Yes,
right?
yes. This is a pleasure, of course, for myself.
An honor.
But it's also a pleasure and an honor for me to be able to present you guys to everyone else that's going to view this. And all of the jewels that I know you guys have. All right. And so, one of the reasons why I wanted to also sit with you is because of the length of time that you guys have been married, which is how long?
48 years.
48 years.
48.
My
Just to make sure
goodness.
that's 4 and 8.
Eight,
To the
yes.
same woman.
Same woman.
Say that again for them in the back.
Same woman.
Amen.
48 years of marriage.
Yes.
I can't wait to dive into that because
All
I know
right.
that there's a lot that you guys have to share. My goodness. And you are a minister? Is that right?
I pastor a small congregation in Kansas City, Missouri, right in the heart of one of the toughest zip codes in the state of Missouri, because I have developed that relationship with what I call people that a lot of people don't want to be bothered with, gangsters,
Yeah.
dope dealers, and they're some of my greatest supporters.
Yes.
Wow.
I want to say thank you for your service. You know, we thank military
First
folks and
responders
first responders, but what you're doing is very much similar to what they do.
Very much so.
Yeah, so thank you for your service,
Appreciate
both
it.
of you.
Appreciate it.
Amen.
You're welcome.
Amen. So, we're going to start out with our famous question that we ask all about couples. What is legacy for you
Yes.
guys? What does 48 years bring in terms of legacy?
Yes.
Well, I can say experience. My mentor once taught me, Dr. J.C. Haynes, he said experience is the worst teacher because it gives you the test first, then it teaches you the lesson. 48 years have taught us a lot of lessons to the point that I feel that our young people, those that's probably viewing this section and hereafter, need to know that legacy is important. You're doing it not just for yourself, but hereafter, and for the now. How many people are in relationships and miserable, and if they just knew how, if they understood legacy,
Yeah.
legacy.
Yeah.
So you're making that imprint.
Yeah.
You're making a passionate imprint
Yes.
that other people can evolve.
Right.
But
Right.
while I'm here, while she's here, in this life, we try to impact people. We make it our business to
Yes.
impact people. So
Amen.
that's one of the off the top meanings for me.
All right.
That's a blessing.
Yeah.
I like how you started that out with legacy. It being, well, first I'll say I like that you mentioned it's impacting and it's lasting, right? So even grandchildren, great grands, and other people looking at this will understand from your life what you've left behind. And I think we were talking a little bit before this about testament. You know, and even now as I'm speaking, I'm thinking about the Old and New Testaments that we have, and those are sort of the written legacies of
Sure.
our people of faith. But you guys are living that, and you're creating that here.
That's right.
now.
That's right. Yeah, I pulled out of that, when you say for young people, for those who are in relationships that are just not great, they're terrible relationships, that was your word. I think about if they only capture the fact that it's not just for them, that what they're in, when I think of legacy, I think of what you're going to leave behind for others to see, and that's exactly what you're describing there. What you're doing, what you've done was not just
And
for
how
you,
you did it.
and how you did
With
it.
the grace of God.
Yes.
That's
Yes.
how you can employ divine intervention.
Yeah.
Giving yourself. I must say, 48 years, I want everybody to know, we enjoy each other, we love each other, but there were some difficulties.
All right.
That was the litmus test, if you would. Those were the benchmarks. How do you handle it? How do you handle it? And some of them I speak personally, I didn't handle them that good.
Yeah.
I admit, I'm going to be honest, I didn't. But I learned.
Yes.
And
Which one taught you the greatest lesson, you think?
I know so many of them. I must say the first one. When I was talking to Terrell about how I was involved with another young lady in the church, and God told me to leave her alone. How often does God speak to our hearts and she ain't the one, he ain't the one? But we push over God and we end up getting into marital relationships and they're wrong from Jump Street.
Wow.
But what God did for me, he broke my wrist and my finger.
Wow.
Put me in the hospital. I was working in the industrial setting, and I got caught between a rope and a rolling bar, and this thumb got caught, and I'm like, oh, not until I pull it out. I couldn't pull it out, so I put this hand to help this hand, and they both got caught, and then I screamed, you know, and the fellow heard me at the other end, and he cut it off. And when he stopped it, I was on my knees looking up, and God said, I told you. She's not the one.
Wow.
I went to the hospital, spent 4 days and 3 nights. And you know, pursuant to that, after that, I still wanted to marry her. And then God had to work things out. And 6 months later, I was married to the right woman for my ministry, for my life.
Yes.
And 48 years later, I'm still married to the right woman for my life.
Amen.
So I think that made the great, there was a lot of them, but that made the greatest impact because God helped me to make the right choice.
And so for you, you've been married to a pastor for 48 years. That can't be easy.
No, not be easy. Actually, I would say that even with us getting married, because before we even got married, or even we even started even liking one another. Because I remember before we used to all hang out as a young people group, you know, at church, or we go to one houses with other young people and we hang out, eat. And I remember he used to say, we used to ask why. They used to ask why didn't he like me? He said I wasn't his cup of tea. And then I used to say, oh, because he's just short. I just never thought of liking him. But it's amazing what God can do. I always pray and ask God, Lord, you know, I want to marry the person you want me to marry. I don't want to just up and marry. I want to make sure it's God's will. And God did that, because I remember, I don't know if you remember, he called me one time, and he asked to speak to my mother. And in the midst of him doing that, he asked me, he was telling me about his situation. He said, if you were in my shoes, what would you do if you're not sure that God wanted you to marry this person? What would you do? I said, you know one thing? If you really lay before God and tell God, ask God to give an answer, God will answer your prayers. If it's not His will for you to marry her, then he won't allow it to happen, because you're praying and you're consulting God about it. And I never forget, that was the day when I got off the phone and I heard him say, maybe I should have been marrying you. And then after I got off the phone, I hollered at my mother and told her that he was on the phone. And then as I was getting ready to go down the stairs, the Spirit spoke to me, the Holy Ghost spoke to me and said that he was going to be my husband. And I said to myself, now what is this? And then I went to take another step back down, and the Lord spoke to me again and said that he was going to be my husband. And I couldn't figure it out because I had no feelings, no nothing for him. But I ran upstairs and got on my knees and I started praying and said, Lord, if this is you got to do two things for me. You got to put some love in my heart for him. I love him as my brother, but not as a husband, you know. And I said, and you got to let him know too. I said, and God brought us through a whole lot, you know, before that happened, because, you know, and then I said to myself, now he's already engaged. He was still engaged to marry this other girl still too. So, you know, I said, oh, I know this ain't right or something. But and then when one day he said that his girlfriend, I was talking to her and she said, I said, y'all's day is getting close. She said, we're not together anymore. I said, oh, and when she said that, it was like if it was a hole in the floor, I think I could have dropped in it, because this was God. I kept asking God, if this is your will, then you fix it, you know, because, you know, if it's God's will, then He's going to work it all out. And He did, because after that, his mother didn't like me. She despised me because she really was in love with his first girlfriend. So she didn't like me, and I was saying, Lord, every time the Lord would let me know he was going to still be my husband, I would say, Lord, but this is not right. If this is you speaking to me, then you're going to fix a relationship between me and his girlfriend, because she was resentful towards me, and for all the right reasons. I mean, and then his mother. So I said, Lord, you got to fix those two things for me. And you know, God fixed it, because one day we was coming from singing somewhere, and I wasn't feeling good, and she came to me. She said, Sister Dolores, you feel okay? I said, no, I don't feel good. She said, want me to take you home? And I said, sure. And that's when God fixed it. And when she was in the car taking me home, she told me that she knew, God had let her know that I was going to be his, that I was going to be the one he was going to come to. And that was amazing, because after that, the only thing I wanted him to fix then was his mother. Because every time I was so afraid, because I wasn't used to adults acting that way towards me, acting like, you know, I respected her. You know, we was taught to respect your elders no matter what. And I always respected her, but I was afraid to say anything to her because the way she acted towards me. And I don't know if he remember that, but we had just came from 9 o'clock prayer that morning. And we was sitting in the park right across the street from where they live, and she was coming across in the park, and I said, "Oh Lord!" And her daughter, and she walked by me, and she didn't hardly say nothing to me. I was trying to speak, but I was afraid. So then all of a sudden, my husband came after him. My husband came and I said, "We're gonna get this straight once and for all." He said, "I want you to come upstairs." And I said, "Lord, fix it. Just fix it this time." And when we went up there and we got through talking, she was fine, you know, from that point on. And then I guess a few months later, we got married, you know. And
Nice.
And you know what I hear in this, and this I think is important for people to realize. I hear order. I hear order, and what I mean by that is you guys just didn't go about this without the Lord's direction,
right,
and wisdom of the people that God placed in their life. And so your prayer was, look, I want to make sure that the relationships around me are repaired.
Right.
So I don't start out this new relationship with a trail of broken relationships
That's true.
already.
Wow.
And so you said, look, I want the love in my heart to be the love of a husband, because he was your friend at that point.
Right.
And then you also said, I want the relationship between me and his mother repaired. And then I also want the relationship between me and this other lady that he was going to marry.
Right.
And so I hear a lot of
That's a
order
great
in
call
that.
out.
And I think people nowadays that are getting married, sometimes they don't
They
consider
don't
any
consider
of these
those.
things.
They
No.
don't.
And they wonder why
It's just
they
what
go
I
into the
want, what I
marriage.
feel
Right.
now.
And they have all these other conflicts with all these other people in their life.
And they don't care.
And they don't care.
Yes.
Which aids in a bad relationship.
Yes.
You know, so but like she stated, if you allow God to fix people that are going to be a part of your life moving forward.
Dolores, if this world were mine, I place at your feet all that I own. I would give it to you. If this world were mine, I give you the flowers, the birds and the bees, and all these things I'll do for nobody but you. If this world were mine, if this world was really mine. And girl, what's happening? How are you? This has been lovely.
Yes, it has.
We need to keep this going when we get home. And we can do the Marvin Gaye. Let's get it on. No, let me stop. Let's get it on.
So, we want to try to be an encouragement to other young women. Me, as a married person, have been married 48 years. Give you some things that help us to keep our kept our marriage together all these years. I would say the number one thing is, again, trusting in God and believing God and leaning and depending on Him. But it's also important that a lot of people don't realize that a lot of people say they're in love, but they're more in love with the relationship than actually in love with one another. Some people are just so excited about getting married so they can have a relationship, and a lot of times when you get married, if you're not really in love, and I say this all the time to young people, you want to make sure that you're in love with the person that you're going to marry, your mate. You want to make sure you're in love with them, and because if you're not, it's not going to work. If you're saying you love, but you're saying it from your lips, but not from your heart. And I tell people all the time, it's a big difference in being in love in loving a person, because in love is from the heart, you know, and when you're in love with a person, you don't want to do anything to damage that person. You don't want to do anything to hurt that person. Yes, you're gonna have your differences. Yes, you're gonna, you know, you're gonna disagree with things, but the most important thing is that as long as you're in love with one another, and you know that no matter what happened, you don't want to do anything to hurt one another, you can make it. But you got to stay before God. I say that all the time, because I say every day, I thank God every day for all these 48 years of us being married. I thank God every day that he allowed us to be married that long. And only reason why I say that, because if it wasn't for him, we wouldn't have been married that long. But because of God and how he kept me with a mind to want to pray and to see God, because I wanted my relationship to work so bad. I said, Lord, whatever it takes to make this relationship work, whatever I got to do, you know, trusting in you, I want to do that. And sometimes you got to, you know, a lot of people in relationships, you don't want to take, or it's not a, you know, some want to give, but they don't want to take. And the opposite, like I might want to give, maybe my husband don't want to take what I give him, or he may give me, and I don't want to take what he's saying. It's a give and take situation. You can't just expect to be married and happy all the time, and you don't have to listen to him, or he don't have to listen to you, because you do. You got to communicate with one another. That's another number two thing is, in a relationship, when we're married, you know, as a woman, you know, I got to learn how to communicate. I had to learn how to communicate with my husband, you know, find out what makes that man ticks, what makes him, you know, what can I do to make this man happy? Because you know what we're trying to do? We're trying to please one another, you know, so whatever it takes that I need to do to please him, I'm going to do just that. No matter what it takes, I'm going to do whatever it takes to please him. And sometimes we're not going to agree all the time. Right. I want you young people to know, you're not going to agree all the time. Right. You're going to have your differences, because we're different people, and we was raised differently. You know, we got, sometimes we have different backgrounds. You know, so you don't know sometimes what to say or what to do, because you really don't want to. You don't want to. Oh, he's wrong, so I don't want to take from him. No, I'm not going to listen to him. You know, but you can't say that. You got to learn how to ask God to help you to shut your mouth and hear somebody sometimes. Because if you can't hear your husband, then your relationship is not going to work neither, because you don't want to hear him. And then when we pray and ask God, Lord, if I'm wrong, I say that, Lord, if I'm wrong, show me myself, so that I can make sure that I'm doing right. But sometimes, you know, we could be in ourselves and not in God, to the point that, you know, we feel like everything we say is right. And that's not true all the time, because everything we say we're not always right. You know, you're going to be wrong sometimes, you know, and we're going to disagree sometimes. Things are going to happen. But the most important thing is that, like I say again, is being in love. And so many young folks of the day, they're in love, they're infatuated. But they're not really in love. And that's why a lot of marriages now don't work together, because we're so anxious to get married. Or I should say, a lot of young folks today they interested in staying together but not really getting married. But, you know, we want to make sure we do it God's way. God's way, we're supposed to get married and have a great relationship together, be able to enjoy one another. And yes, we're going to have our disagreements, but we got to learn to accept one another. You know, whatever my husband say to me, if I don't think it's right, why fuss at him about it? Why not just give it to God and say, Lord, if this is not right, then you help me to trust in you. You show me which way is the right way, and then encourage him so he can understand what I'm saying, because a lot of times we don't understand one another, but we don't know how to give it to God and say, God, you work it out for me. You work it out for me. I want this relationship to work. I mean, 48 years. During these 48 years, I always ask God to do one thing. Lord, whatever it takes, I want you to keep this marriage together, because I believe you put us together. I have no doubt in my mind that you didn't put us together. And even though we have our differences, even though sometimes we get upset with one another, but the main factor is that this marriage is going to work, because God is in the midst of it. You know, as long as we trust God and put God first in our marriage, and lean and depend on him in our marriage, I tell you, you can't go wrong. You cannot go wrong because you're putting your trust in God, you're loving God, and you love this man so much. You don't, and that's the other thing. When you love a person, you don't want to see in love with a person. You don't want to hurt that person. You don't want to do anything to mess him up because you really love him. Sometimes that's the reason why we can take so much, because we're in love. When you're not in love, you can't take nothing because you don't want to hear nothing. But when you're really in love with God, you can be in love with that person. And when you're in love with that person, you can make it work because you really truly are in love. And the reason why I say you can tell when you're in love, because when you don't want to, you can't stand to be without him. Sometimes you can't stand to be with him too. Sometimes you go through your days, your times, but but you're in love with him, so you want to do whatever it takes to make this relationship work because we're both in love with one another. And so women, just learn how to trust God for your relationship. If you're young and you're thinking about getting married, make sure that you're in love with one another. I mean, truly in love with, not with their looks, not with their bodies, but in love with one another. Because guess what? As time go on, your looks gonna change, your body's gonna change, things are gonna change about you. But if you're really in love with that person, you don't care what they look like. You don't care how they change, because you're in love with that person for who they are, not for what they really look like. So, just be encouraged and learn how to put your trust in God and ask God for your directions on how to live holy so that you can trust that relationship and trust God that he's going to bring that relationship together. The more we're married, the closer we can get.
Now for the men, hopefully I've shown you how to do it. Just sit and listen. Just sit and listen. Sometimes that is the greatest response. Let your wife, let her understand that you take interest in what she's saying, even if you don't understand it. And brethren, oftentimes we say things, have conversations. Our wife look at us, and they look at us like, what you talking about? But being in a relationship, a long-lasting relationship, as my wife has stated, you will change. You will change. But I feel, from my experiences, if I listened more to her, some of the fallacies of my own behaviors would have been different. But as I got older, I learned to listen. Listening is one of the most valued gifts God has given us. There's a saying, God has given us 2 ears and 1 mouth. So we should take advantage of that principle, listen more, respond less, but to make sure God is in the midst, because God is the only way that we have made it 48 years. There have been some ups and downs, some peaks and hills, but thanks be to God, we went through them together. And she mentioned about change, body change. I look at the young people who are shooting the video. They're young, they're youthful, they're vibrant. We used to be that way, but time brings on a change.
Yes.
Time brings on a difference. But one thing I always tell my wife, I've never known her at this age, so I'm still learning her. I'm still learning as her aging process is still progressive, and I'm still learning. The changes are there. So you got to be willing to watch, listen, and be able to respond in a fruitful and positive way. Again, your body changes. And, when it comes to intimacy, your body changes. But the Bible says marriage is honorable and the bed is undefiled. But here again, that love, even in intimacy, to know that you love each other. The intimacy may not be as it was when you're in your teens or in your 20s. As I stated, as vibrant as these young people are who are shooting the video, as time goes on, they're going to change, but that love is there. That's the critical part. That's the path. That Bible is right. I say it all the time. Intimacy is critical even in growing older. That's one of the greatest healing factors in people who are of that geriatric age, that intimacy. You watch people who have Alzheimer's, and the beautiful part is when that mate understands them, they're able to go through that dreaded disease with the comfort knowing that their loved one is there. So to young men, you know, make sure you tell yourself, ask yourself, you're young, look at your wife or prospective wife and ask yourself, when you get 60, 50, 75, can you still love her? Can you still love her? My wife looks good. She looks extremely good. And I just told him I have good taste. But look at her and ask yourself, 40, 50 years from now, can I feel the way about her now or then as I feel about her now? You should be able to answer yes. If you answer no, you better seek God. You better ask God to help you. So we want you to understand that we're here to encourage you. We've been married 48 years, 4 biological children, 3 adopted boys, 20-some grandkids, 2 great-grandkids. And let me tell you, our vibrancy, our intimacy is still strong. And I'm going to leave it right there and praying to God that your body will take changes. Diseases will come, cancer and things of that nature, and they will erase some of the vibrancy of your physical man, but it's your inner man that you want to develop. It's your spirit man that you want to develop, that love man, if you would, so that once your physical man is on the downswing, your spiritual man, that love man, that intimate man, that God man still can portray and still be engaged in that relationship. Thank you so very much.